About 4 years ago, I was in a college at a gathering of priests and theologians, and this lady, she led us in prayer in a little oratory one day, and we're all kind of around her in kind of a semicircle, and she was kind of in the middle, and she was going through a beautiful kind of a story and a prayerful way of talking about the story of Abraham and Sarah. Really, really beautiful and really nicely done. And of course, then when she stopped telling the story, she asked a few questions. Well, has anybody anything to say, or any questions or reflections yourselves? And one young guy put up his hand, and he began to verbally humiliate her in front of everybody. I mean, really vicious. He used extraordinary foul language against her and profoundly insulted her. And he did this by really staring nastily at her. And it's one of those moments in life where something happens out of the blue that's so shocking, you're stunned to silence for a brief second before you can respond. And when he finished his insulting rant against her, she simply looked at him and said, "God bless you," she said. That's all she said. He got up and walked out of the oratory. A fair play to her. I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people, including myself, who would probably deck him for coming across something like that. They would, something, it'd be a ruffle or kerfuffle or something, you know what I mean? Once you're over the shock of what just happened. And other people they'd return his insults with more insults again, verbally attack him even further and faster type of thing. But the lady didn't. She didn't. She returned his cutting insult with a blessing and a prayer. She essentially absorbed his aggression and insult. Extraordinary example of what Christ is talking about today. It's something that never left me, and it came to my head straight away when I was reading the scriptures this weekend. Friends, we're treated as some of the most beautiful and core essential aspects of the gospel and of Christianity today, to love your enemies. Christ commands us not to tolerate people, not to tolerate those who persecute you or hurt you or insult you, not to vaguely accept them, whatever that might mean. No, we're to love them. We're all to love them, to will their good. It's a whole different ballgame than simply accepting them or just tolerating somebody. And folks, this is really played out very well in our first reading, where King David, as a young guy, he has the opportunity to kill his enemy there and then, sneaks to the camp and has the opportunity to spear him, to get rid of him. But he doesn't do it. He doesn't kill him. Because in David's eye, the enemy that David sees in his eye is also a son of God, someone who's anointed by the Lord. And David does not make himself judge, jury, and executioner there and then. He leaves those roles up to the Lord. Friends, love your enemy is a higher form of divine justice. It's why forgiveness is particularly powerful, and by God is ever needed, more so today. It's so powerful in disarming our aggressors in life. Gandhi himself once said, he very, very carefully aware of this, an eye for an eye only makes the world go blind. Martin Luther King, in his fight for social rights in the 60s, knew all too well what Christ is talking about this morning. John Paul II, after being shot in St. Peter's Square in the early 80s, he, instead of organizing a secret killing squad to go and do this guy in for trying to shoot him, he instead goes to prison where he is and says, "I forgive you," verbally forgives the man who shot him. These men, they understood what the Lord was getting at in our gospel today. I know, folks, the question obviously arises, do we understand what Christ is asking us today? It's some ask, it really is. Man's sense of justice is to attack, right? Just to repay pain with pain, hurt with hurt the whole time. The vicious cycle starts to erupt then straight away, like a snowball that's out of control going down a hill. And this is so obvious in our online world today. Lots of people respond to comments on Facebook and this, that, and the other as if their personal opinions are absolute and sacrosanct. Because, let's be honest, most of us nowadays, we're drilled into thinking that my opinions and feelings and thoughts are fullness of truth, that my truth is as equal as your truth, this type of thing. Words and thoughts that are devoid of logic and basic consideration of just holding on and thinking about it first, and are instead based only on reactionary or feelings only, is dangerous nonsense. Not every opinion is equal. It's as simple as that. I remember last year when I started up my YouTube channel, as a start, I was bombarded with extraordinarily hateful comments like there was no tomorrow. Really atrocious insults and degrading comments. And most of them made me laugh out loud because they were really good. They're quite witty in many respects. But a few of them now, I have to say, they cut close to the bone. But such is the internet, such is the online world. And I found myself praying for those people who don't know me, but yet they feel compelled. There's a force behind them to verbally assault me online with really wicked tongue, really wicked foul language. It's a world, folks. The online world is a place where our judgments and our condemnation of pointing the finger and giving out the whole time, it runs wild without any form of restraint. That's why, I think our online platforms, they seem to only intensify aggression and kind of stokes a malice in the heart, And of course, then all that does is divide us. It turns people against each other, which seems to have real-world consequences at the moment, as we're all too painfully aware of. And Christ is saying, no. He's saying, no. If you want to follow me, that is not how you are to behave. If you want to be a follower of mine, that is not what I'm asking you to do. He says, Christ's strategy, everybody, of non-violence, of love your enemy, it's God's way, all right? It's the only way that shows the futility and the nonsensical of violence and a violent path and hatred. I mean, soldiers who were driving long nails into our Lord's feet to nail him to a piece of wood in the shape of a cross, he didn't start to curse them. He didn't start to use foul language to attack them. No, he started to pray for them, even at most violent and most painful and degrading moment in his earthly life. And he says, I forgive you. And what did that do? Most of them ran away from the cross, but some stood there and they were converted on the spot. Just like how he disarmed those who were firing stones at the woman caught in adultery. I mean, Christ didn't pick up big rocks and start throwing them at the guys as well. Not at all. He disarmed them with truth and with love, and they simply walked away. Extraordinary. Folks, my point today is that love absorbs aggression. Okay? It absorbs genuine evil inclinations. Because God is love, and God's will for you and me is unity with him. So if we genuinely try to love those who persecute us, we're in effect genuinely trying to save them. It's extraordinary. To love your enemy is an attempt to save them. It's a genuine attempt to turn hearts away from paths of judgment and condemnation only, which of course only leads to hell. And to reply a blessing when you're insulted, that cuts the vicious cycle of hatred, and it stops the situation getting worse or a relationship deteriorating. That's why, look, folks, love is like a sponge that soaks up water. Goodness, prayer, blessing absorbs hatred that's spewed out towards you, and it frustrates the aggressor, whether the aggressor is physical or indeed even spiritual, to the point where they give up. They know it's no good anymore to attack you. I mean, I could have retorted those people who gave me dog abuse online last year and said, great with you, and I know what you're about, and I'm going to say a piece of my mind now. I didn't. That's not the way of Christ at all. It's easy to do that because you can remain anonymous almost online. But that is not the way of Christ at all. So, folks, when someone insults you, send back a compliment and a blessing instead of another insult.